Hey guys, welcome to today's Vehicle Visionary. Today my friends at Land Rover of Shreveport have loaned me the all-new, completely redesigned for 2020 Range Rover Evoque. This is the P300 HSE model that we're going to take a good close look at today. And of course there are some changes for 2020, including increased interior space, a little bit longer wheelbase, and a very interesting inventive way of increasing leg room in the back seat. And I'll show you what I mean by that when we hop into the interior in just a little while. This second generation of the Evoque is definitely more mainstream than the first generation, and definitely features some nice styling features here on the body. The hood itself, while not completely flat, it does have some nice contours to it, and what would appear to be air ducts right here, that's just cosmetic. That doesn't actually let any air into the engine, but it does give a nice look to the hood. Of course, you do have two grills here that are somewhat different styles, but that's always a good thing because it's going to keep your attention going from the bottom of the vehicle all the way over, which is the intention of the lines, including the contour of the lights not being specifically here on the front end. They actually are molded into the front fender off of the front end, giving it a sporty look. And now that we've opened the hood on the 2020 Evoque, let's talk a little bit about what you're going to find on this particular model. It's a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It puts out 296 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. The gas mileage is 21 miles per gallon in the city, 26 out on the highway, and it's mated to a 9-speed automatic transmission. And while this is not intended to be a high-performance SUV, it's really made for off-road situations. There are multiple driving modes that we'll take a look at when we do our interior tour and go through the infotainment screen and systems found there. But in the interest of fair reporting, the 0 to 60 on this particular model with this engine combination is 6.6 seconds. Now, as you can see on the screen, I'm listing the safety features that you will find on this very Evoque, and all of the other features and information about this particular model are found down in the description of the video if you want to check that out on the dealership's website. You do have power folding side view mirrors, and those will fold and or unfold, or fold in and fold out, I should say, depending on whether or not the vehicle is locked or unlocked. And you can push a button right here on the door handles themselves. They're going to, of course, pop out, and the side view mirror will come back out, or it will fold back in, and the door handles will go back inside the door themselves when you push that button, or just lock and or unlock with the remote. A nice little feature there. Of course, this particular model with the deep tinted black windows are going to look a little bit darker because of the exterior color. And I must say, I like the overall layout of the style of this Evoque. Not only the exterior color, but the color of the rims as well. I have to admit that those black rims at one point had not grown on me, but over the course of time of doing work on this YouTube channel, Vehicle Visionary, I've really come to like that. I don't think that chrome rims would look so good with the exterior color here. You'll also find a full panoramic sunroof. Now, if you're looking to open that sunroof, that's one thing to consider. It does not open, but it most certainly lets in a lot of light, and it's a true panoramic sunroof. You don't have any separation or anything like that like you might have in other Land Rover models. Not that that's a bad thing, but in this particular model, that would really take away quite a bit. So I like the fact that that's laid out the way that it is. Okay guys, let's talk styling on the rear of the Evoque. Just like on the front end, I mentioned the fact that the headlights are not just squarely on the front, they contour themselves into the side of the body. You have the same thing here with these rear tail lights, and just give it a much better look, more sporty, more racy looking, kind of more elegant looking even so back here on the rear. And a nice size rear spoiler here above the rear window, and that serves more than just a cosmetic purpose. It actually channels air when you're driving down the road over the rear window, and that's going to help keep the rear window clean. And of course, in here you do have the rear wiper if you need that to clean that off. Not a problem, or when it's raining, whatever the case may be. And you might look up here on the top and see what looks like that little shark fin. That's not an antenna. What that actually is the camera used for the ClearSight rear view mirror. One thing you'll notice about the lines of the Evoque, as you get towards the rear, it kind of narrows down. And that can make it a little more difficult, not only that, but having to look beyond the rear seats, especially if you have a passenger in the middle of the rear seats. It's going to be very difficult to see what's behind you with the rear view mirror. But that ClearSight mirror makes the difference, and that's where the camera is found. The rear view camera itself is right here above the license plate. So there's actually two of the different cameras on this vehicle, and I'll show you what those look like on the screen when we get into the interior. Now let's open the rear lift gate and talk about cargo space. And if you're interested in towing something with your Evoque, the max towing specification is 3,968 pounds. Now you do have some options here. You can leave the rear seats in their upright position, or you can fold the 60-40 split rear seats down and increase your cargo space from 21.5 cubic feet to a total of 50.5 cubic feet. There is a spare tire and the tools located to change that tire under the floor here. So if you ever get into a situation when you're off-roading or wherever you may be, you're going to find that you have the convenience of a spare tire instead of having to have the inflation kit that some vehicles have in this day and age. By the way, this is a power lift gate. Of course, multiple options for opening that, whether it's on the lift gate itself using your remote or the button on the interior. And there is an additional option to close the lift gate by pushing the button on the lift gate itself. Okay guys, let's talk about the experience your rear seat passengers will have. Of course, I mentioned the panoramic sunroof. That's going to be super nice and enjoyable, especially for the rear seat passengers, because they get to enjoy more of that, obviously. And there's one feature back here I'm going to tell you about that I would like to see on a lot more vehicles, but I'll get to that in just a minute. You do have dual air conditioning vents here, but no adjustment. So the only thing that your rear seat passengers can do is either rely on somebody in the front to adjust the air accordingly as they need it back here. Of course, they can adjust the vents or close them or open them altogether depending on what they want to do. The seats themselves are very comfortable, and I'll show you something very interesting, not only here in the back seat, but in the front as well. You're going to notice the British flag is actually part of the design of the seats. Somebody at the dealership pointed that out to me, and I don't know if I would have noticed that otherwise, but it's one of those things, once you see it, you can't unsee it kind of thing. So, like I said earlier, not only is the wheelbase a little bit longer, the overall length of the Evoque is longer than it was in the first generation, but there's another little trick that Land Rover has used to increase space here in the back seat, and it's actually found in the front seats themselves. As you can see, there's actually an indentation here. The way it's built, there's actually kind of an inset area right here that gives you more space. Not that I'm going to stick my legs that far up, but kind of gives you a way to see how they've done that. And I'm actually very comfortable back here. There's a slight recline to these seats back here that makes it even more comfortable and more enjoyable for your rear seat passengers. But what happens if you have somebody in your vehicle, no matter where they're sitting at any of the four doors, who's not the most observant person? There's actually an indicator on all four doors that tells you if there's any traffic coming when you're about to open the door. It gives you a little warning there and says, basically telling you not to open the door. So something that people are definitely going to want to pay attention to if you have that one clumsy friend who hops in the back seat or maybe in the front seat, or maybe even the driver themselves, make sure they know about that. That is what I would like to see on more vehicles, because I cannot tell you the number of times, and I bet all of you have had this experience too, when you're driving down the road, somebody's parked on the side of the road or wherever they may be, and they literally open their door into traffic. That's just not a good situation for you or them. This is a great safety feature to help potentially prevent that from happening. Okay guys, we're here in the front seat, And this is, of course, a luxury SUV, and it has the materials that you would expect that do make it look nice. Of course, you've got the same feature that I mentioned earlier with that warning indicator on the front doors that you do on the rear, so that you don't accidentally open up your door into traffic, or maybe somebody's walking past your vehicle. You don't want to hit them with the door or have them run into it as they walk by. You have steering wheel mounted controls, of course, shifter paddles as well, that could definitely come in handy off-road depending on what mode you're driving in. Those could be very useful. And the thing I like about the steering wheel mounted controls here in the Evoque is that Land Rover has given them a unique look when compared to a lot of other vehicles that we've looked at in the past on Vehicle Visionary. It's not that that's a bad thing on those other vehicles, but I just like seeing something that has a different layout. But the functionality is still the same. It's not difficult to use. And of course, here on the center instrument cluster, the dashboard, you're going to be able to see your Evoque up there and see what's going on with it. You have a multitude of features when you push menu, options that you can go through, different changes you can make, different pieces of information you can look at, settings, all sorts of great things, and it's just super easy to navigate. It's not difficult. You do have a center console here. You've got some USB ports in there and a 12-volt power outlet, in addition to a 12-volt power outlet in the back seat as well. I didn't show you that earlier, but it is there, and a decent amount of storage space. And then right here, if you're looking for the cup holders, they're actually hidden away under this removable little cover or tray that I'm not quite sure what you're supposed to do with. I guess you could put it in the console when you're not using it here, but that could be one of those little multitaskers if you don't have any cups to go here. And you actually have two different sizes of cup holders. So one for maybe a water bottle like this that will fit in this one, or a Big Gulp could potentially fit right here. If somebody has one, the water bottle fits in there a lot better than it did over here, a little more snug right there. But you can put this center tray back in there if I can get it in. I'm just not used to doing that. There we go. And you could store something right there, change or whatever. That's a nice little option there. The shifter here is a little bit different, but I do like the design of it, and it doesn't take long to get used to. There's just a button on the front. You push that in and you can pull back to go into drive, or forward to go into reverse. And of course the P right there is for park. Now, before we get into the infotainment, the two screens here, I want to show you something. You're going to notice this top screen here is at the same angle as the dashboard, and I do like the way the dashboard is designed. It just gives it kind of a sleek, elegant look. That looks nice. But the only inconvenience that you might see is that there's a glare on the infotainment screen here on the top, and you have to kind of look up to be able to see things. And even at that, at this particular angle where I'm sitting right now, that's a little challenging. So what you do is you go into settings and you can change the mode from dark to light, whatever you want to do. But there's a plus and a minus right here. And as I hold the plus down, look at that. It's going to bring the screen up and change its angle. I would like to see that angle maybe come up a little bit further, and maybe be at a 90-degree angle, and maybe even the ability to raise that up some. I think that would be helpful in addition to what you can already do. But this is definitely a great feature that you can use. So why don't I go ahead and change your position with the camera, and we'll talk about the center screens here, and I'll show you how those work. Okay guys, just a quick little rundown here of the center screens, and you do have two of them. We're going to look at the top one first that you can change the angle on, and just so you can see a little bit better of how that works. And I apologize that I'm having to put my finger in the center of the shot like this, but it's the only way I can get this to work. And we're here in my garage, so it's a little bit darker in here, a little bit easier to see everything. But you can go over here to all settings, and that's going to actually take you to this screen. And of course you can go back and forth between whatever you want to change here. Of course we can go back, you can go to features. There is just so much here that I'm not going to take the time to go through everything, but just so you can see a little bit about what's available. You have navigation, pretty much everything you're used to, but just a very simple system to use. Of course, you do have cameras. You have a rear view camera, and like I said, you do have the ClearSight rear view mirror that I'm going to show you here in just a second. Okay guys, you do have a couple of settings you can change here on the ClearSight rear view camera. Like I showed you earlier in the video, you can adjust the brightness if you want to. You can dim that down if you want, or you can adjust the angle, as you can see right there. So very nice to use. It gives you a good clear view of what's going on behind you without any kind of obstructions whatsoever. Okay guys, here we're going to go take a look at the center screen, the second screen here, and I apologize that the shifter is somewhat in the way, but hopefully you still have a good view. And here we're going to change the climate controls. Everything's here. You've got dual zone climate control, and if you want to change the fan speed, you're just going to push on that fan right there, and it's going to use the right side dial to change the fan speed. Everything there is pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. And at the top of the screen, you're going to go through multiple different settings here that you can change. This is media. Now I have that turned off so that we don't get any copyright notices or strikes from YouTube, but just so you can see that is there. And of course, there's vehicle right here. Depending on what mode you want to drive in, this is how you're going to make your different selections there, as you can see on your screen. Depending on what mode you're driving in, what your driving situation is, if you're on sand, if you're in dirt, mud, whatever the case may be, everything is pretty much available here for you, depending on what your situation is. Okay guys, I always like to hear your feedback. What do you think about the refresh of the Land Rover Range Rover Evoque? Do you currently own one? Do you own the previous generation or the current generation? Or maybe do you plan on stepping into one of these? Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. I'm always interested in hearing your feedback. I'd like to thank my friends at Land Rover of Shreveport for being nice enough to loan me this Evoque for the day. It has definitely been a lot of fun to check out, to drive, and to tell you all about. And of course, I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to watch. I look forward to seeing you in my next video.